So, how do you all feel about the new changes to Warhammer 40K? We just recently had an index card update, a Pariah Nexus tournament companion update, and a rules commentary update. Every single faction in the game got an update of some sorts. Some didn't get touched at all in the MFM, some had some brutal changes like Thousand Sons and Sisters of Battle. How are you feeling right now during these changes? Did you have to jump ship to another army? Or are you continuing to build your current favorite faction? Today, on Rapid Fire Tactics, episode 13, we're going to break down a lot of information that came out on the new updates just a couple days ago. All right? I'm not going to go through every single faction, but I'm going to go through a lot of factions and just break down some intricacies and help everyone understand the comprehensive portions of the rules. Thank you so much for participating as always, and stay tuned for the show. Just recently, Warhammer 40K has flipped on its head with some meta shattering changes. A lot of people are jumping ship into new factions or older factions they used to play. For those of you who already know that orcs are amazing, we're going to see a ton of more orc players now as their points have decreased substantially. So let's go ahead and go through the show and show you a lot of the changes. We have hit the crazy amount of documents threshold, and this young lady is showing my sentiments exactly. So let's start off with the Pariah Nexus updates, and then we'll go directly into the rules commentary updates and the card index updates. I will not be doing all of the factions, but I will be doing a plethora of different factions where I will touch on a few topics like Blood Surge and GW finally fixing the orc rules. My gosh. So to start off, Storm Hostile has been changed to the first turn now. You can still shuffle it back if you want to, but it does score now on turn 1. So those are some of the recent changes to Storm Hostile. I'm glad they did that, and they left that caveat where you can still shuffle it back into your deck if you want to. Also, Hidden Supplies was changed to the players roll off now, and the winner selects which corner the objective marker will be moved to. Still like 9th edition, it feels like where it can be gamed by the winner and place it in the open, or place it behind a wall to stage your close combat armies. So this is still in a very weird situation where you can kind of game this against your opponent if you're a very shooty army or you want to throw them off guard. And now we're going to finish up the remainder of the Pariah Nexus Tournament Companion. There weren't a lot of updates on there, and then we're going to move on to the index cards and rules commentary updates. So first things first, in the secret missions. So just to make sure this is crystal clear to everyone, right? Previously, and as it was worded, you could still get points up to 20 VP for your first primary portion, right? Even if you had a secret mission going on up to the 5th battle round. So you really saw what you saw in previous editions where people would get one of those 35 point at the end of the game, kind of swings. It was a real feel bads moment for everyone. I've actually had it done to me once, right? It doesn't feel good whatsoever. So they made some clarifications by GW where you can't have those big swings in the 5th battle round anymore. So you're only allowed to get up to 20 VP for your initial primary VP for the 4th battle round. And then in the 5th battle round, you can't receive any more because you're only going to get your secret mission points for that. Anything that's excess VP awarded above this maximum is lost. We also saw to linchpin Linchpin was an amazing, amazing primary mission. For those of you who played it a lot, knew that you can previously get 23 VP for it. All right. They have capped it all the way to 15 VP, which I would say it's worth it. And I'm glad that they actually made this change. Now let's move into the rules commentary and index cards portion, where I'm going to read off a couple of these new rules and tell you my opinion about it. So the first one being the first question of four is, if my opponent selects an attached unit for a mark for death secondary mission, which units forming that attached unit must have destroyed to score VP? So to score VP, you must destroy the bodyguard unit and at least one of the leader units that was attached to it. So if you have an apothecary, for example, and a captain and a unit, right? All you need to do is kill one. You're probably going to go against apothecary because it's the easiest one to kill, right? But you only need to select one of them. Here it gives an example of boys where it has a war boss and a weird boy. So once again, you're going to go against a weird boy because he has less wounds. It has no invul as well. So that's some great clarifications for a lot of the secondary rules missions that come up in the game. When the next question being, when selecting units from the Mark for Death secondary mission, can I select a leader with an attached unit? The answer is no. When performing the terraform action, can I terraform an objective marker my opponent has already terraformed? That wasn't quite clear, to be honest with you, when you read it. A lot of people in the community were confused about this. I knew initially that I was confused, but after rereading it for a while and a lot of people talking to me about how this worked entirely, I knew that you couldn't terraform one that was already terraformed. So I'm glad they finally clarified that. I'm just sad that they did it this late. When do I resolve mission rules, such as supply drop, which happened at the start of the battle? So these happen now just after the determined first turn step. So that was another clarification, so people understood exactly the timing of when this happens. So in this one, they finally clarified that the Doom Bolt and arcane genetic alchemy debate is finally over, where some people tried to game the system and say you could not take those saves as the active player chooses the sequencing order, and they would normally select the opponent to get, the short end of the stick, and that their abilities would go off first and nothing could happen after that Doom Bolt. Now, if you have a trigger that affects an ability, it works, but Deathwing Watchers is still a no-go and it's not affected by this rule. So there are some new timing clarifications that were made to be more clear and concise, so people were aware of the order of persisting effects. Angron being one of those examples where if he was destroyed at the top of the round and came back in the bottom of the round, they would still have the Oath of the Moment or Judgment tokens as examples that are persisting effects still affecting Angron. They also clarified that abilities and auras continue to benefit the model being destroyed until it is removed from the battlefield, which I'm super happy that they did, right? There was some ambiguity when it came of a lot of abilities. Once again, with the timing and sequencing, what happens first? Do I continue to have my auras even though I'm being destroyed? And on the next one, we're going to talk about a core ability, specifically the leader core ability. On this one, each time the last model and a bodyguard unit is destroyed, each character unit that is part of that attached unit is no longer part of an attached unit. It becomes a separate unit with its original starting strength. If this happens as a result of an attack, they become separate units after the attacking unit has resolved all of its attacks. So this is something that I've told a lot of community members and players in my area before. It's always been resolved after all of the attacks are done, but they made some clarifications here to having characters. The second paragraph stating if you have multiple characters, the same exact thing. So each time the last model and a character unit is attached to a bodyguard unit is destroyed and there is not another character unit attached, that attached unit's bodyguard unit is no longer part of an attached unit. So if one character is killed out and the other character is still there, it's still an attached unit. It doesn't become a separate unit. So some clarification there. A big one is the surge moves, specifically when it comes to Khorne Berserkers, right? So the surge move does not work like it did before. The FAQ trumps everything, including the data sheet that we have for Khorne Berserkers. But that also means you don't have to move closer and choose to move less than you've rolled entirely. And we'll see later on that you don't even have to move at all after seeing the dice result. And you're still considered moved, but you don't have to do anything at all. This can also help out with Overwatch. If you're trying to make a charge and it ends up killing one of your models, you're not forced to blood surge into that unit anymore and lose your charging bonus. You could stay just out of engagement range, have a 1-inch charge, and still get your bonus for charging. So, finalizing all the Pariah Nexus tournament companion updates and the rules commentary updates before we get into the index and codex updates, where I'm very excited to talk about a couple of factions. But leaving off, we're going to talk about ruins and visibility. And this is specifically for models with bases. So for all models with bases and all other models, the model's base is used to determine if it is not within, or wholly within a ruin. And for the purposes of visibility into or through a ruin, visibility to and from such a model that overhangs its base is determined only by its base and parts of that model that do not overhang its base. So this was a great clarification for things like Angron, where maybe his wings or his sword that just slightly goes past his base. You cannot shoot those portions that are in the ruins. It's just everything that's within the silhouette of the base. But now moving on to what's most important, where they finally fixed the org datasheet abilities that gave them benefits for certain characters. Yeah, I'm super excited too. So, reading on page 95, the War Boss abilities, the biggest and the best, and War Boss and Mega Armor abilities, Dead Brutal. They have changed the wording on both of them so they can both be effective while the wall is active for your army. So the War Boss gets the 4 attacks on the melee weapons, and the War Boss and Mega Armor gets the +3 or the damage 3 characteristic while the wall is active for your army. So I'm super happy that they made this clarification. This was things that tournament organizers like myself, who want to run the game as rules as written and not as intended. We are not the designers. I am not a designer, even though I work for the team. But still, you want to do the right thing. Do it as intended, what's on the actual sheet, data sheet, rules, whatever it might be. But I'm glad that Games Workshop finally clarified this to be less ambiguous and more crystal clear to exactly how it should work. Also, we're going to talk about Snickrock here. Snickrock has some amazing clarifications to what happens when he's being Overwatch and leading commandos and such. One of the questions of 2 is, can an opponent use the fire Overwatch stratagem when I remove Boss Snickrot unit from the battlefield using his cunning infiltrator ability? No, so he can't be Overwatch when he's using his ability. Also, can my opponent use the fire Overwatch stratagem when I set Boss Snickrot's unit back up on the battlefield using his cunning infiltrator ability? Yes, unless he is leading a unit of commandos when he is set back up due to their sneaky gets ability. All right. So those of you who don't know, commandos can never be Overwatch. So he will share those rules as well as long as he is attached to that unit. So a couple of Q&As for you guard enthusiasts out there. The tank commander can shoot on death, but when it comes to things like grenades, doom bolt, or anything that does mortal wounds, as an example. Because it's not an attack, it cannot shoot on death, but can shoot on death for hazardous, which is weird because I guess hazardous is a pseudo attack being done by an opponent in a weird way. But anyways, also Kazarkin and Creed cannot triple stack orders. I felt like this is how it always worked anyways, but here's some clarification for you guard gun butts out there. And also going on to the two FAQs. So this is actually a big change where I have made a couple shows telling people that this does not work. Games Workshop has intervened and said that it absolutely does work, and I'm excited for the Space Wolf players out there and Black Templar players out there that get this ability, and it actually works now, because previously, if you read it as rules as written, it did not work whatsoever, but Games Workshop is saying that it does. So specifically for the Warrior Pride stratagem, to give a unit the benefit of a saga my army has not yet completed, and then I target the same unit with another stratagem that has an enhance effect. If my army has completed that saga, does that unit benefit from that enhanced effect? For example, I use Warrior Pride and then select Saga of the Beast Slayer. Then I use the Go for the Throat stratagem on that same unit. Do that unit's melee weapons gain the Lance ability? Yes, for the purposes of the second stratagem, the targeted unit is treated as though your army has completed that saga. And the same thing for the Vow for the Templars. So it works in the same way. If you have something that says it works, or it thinks it works, or it sort of works, it actually works now. So, just a clarification for your Death Guard players out there: when an objective marker that has been infected by an army via the Spread the Sickness detachment rule remains infected if my opponent controls it at the start or the end of your turn. So, yes, however, while your opponent controls it, that objective marker, it does not have the Nurgle's gift ability. So, that just means that while they control it, it doesn't have the ability. But when they no longer control it, right, it starts working just like it intended to work originally. So, very nice. It resumes back to the sickness, and great clarification on this Q&A. Another one is exactly how I've been playing it when it comes to the use for the Blood God stratagem to make the Blessings of a Corn roll. Could I use a 666 from that roll if there is one to use Angron's Reborn and Blood ability? Yes, I've been doing this entire time. Basically, you can use those rolls, but not take away any of your abilities to use those rolls, right? So the wording seemed clear before, but now there's a clarification. You can use the 666 without it taken away from the pool of abilities. All right. And then some great clarifications also, especially the Canis Rex one. And then we're going to talk about another World Eaters one when it comes to Hell Brutes. So the Canis Rex model is destroyed. Can Sir Hector continue and complete an action that Canis Rex model started? Now is a definitive no. Before, there were a couple missions, secondary missions, that you can do it for and some that you couldn't because of the wording on there. Now is explicit, and it states that he can never continue to do an action once Canis Rex is destroyed if Canis Rex started that action, right? So they're individuals. And I think that's the right way to go with that. And I'm happy they made that change. So, going on to the World Eater's Hellbrute Frenzy ability allows it to fight and therefore pile in when it is not within engagement range. No, unless in the fight phase, and would be able to end a pile in move within engagement range of one or more enemy units. So, just a clarification, right? Unless you're in the fight phase, you're not allowed to pile in. And the second one is basically, shooting in the fight phase, which you cannot do because Big Guns Never Tire rule restricts you from doing that. All right. So hang tight. This was the end of the show, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you to everyone who participated in the show all the way to the end. I always try to put a little bit of comic relief in there so people can enjoy it a little bit more on the Rapid Fire Tactics episode 13 on Onslaught Gaming 40K's platform. Thank you so much. Make sure to leave me a comment, share below if you need to in the YouTube description section. As always, give me a thumbs up if you like the show and you like supporting Onslaught Gaming 40K. Thank you. As always, hopefully I see you next time. I'll see you in 2 weeks when some more advanced Warhammer 40K rules. Take care, everyone.